Well, I think there's been an evolution of the blades, and I think it's easy to explain. But first of all, I need to tell that everybody that I went to visit Yipching in December of 2012, and had a conversation about this. Told him that I was using swords now instead of Bacham-do, and he said, that's good. It'll help your punch. But during that conversation, he told me about how his father had brought a pair of peach wood Bacham-do, and that was the first Bacham-do that came to Hong Kong. And that his father then went to a metal worker who was a friend of his and asked him if he would turn them into, some practical fighting blades. And then they came up with the design that we see today, this stainless steel blade and the brass handle. And that's kind of what Yipching says is the official Bacham-do, because that's what his father and his friend came up with. But if we think about this notion of them being made out of wood, then you can see that they were probably more along the lines of a practice blade anyway. So if you compare the Bacham-do to the Hudyo-do, this, then you see that originally the blade was designed to stab and also to slash, whereas the Bacham-do has no stabbing ability whatsoever. So it's more likely that what happened was that somebody said, well, I don't want to carve like this kind of thing out of wood because, even then it hurts if you play with it. So I'm going to blunt the edge and I'm going to make it a little bit wider so that, if I hit somebody with it, doesn't hurt them. And then another thing that you can see with these, Bacham-do that actually makes it hard to practice with too is this, 90-degree angle on the quillion here. Versus these these Hudyo-do, which have a little bit wider angle, and then you can see some others that the angle is like way out here, and some of them are much shorter with the angle out like that too. So it seems more likely that what happened was somebody was trying to make this out of wood, and if you came out this way, it ended up breaking all the time. So somebody made it a little bit shorter and more 90 degrees. I think that's more likely. And so now you see people all over the internet who are saying that they got these Bacham-do and they sharpened them up so that they're fighting blades. And most knife fighters that you talk to say that's a terrible design for a fighting blade. And I have to agree, this is a great design for a practice blade, but it's not very good for a fighting blade. And so if we can accept that nobody ever actually fought with Bacham-do, that this was designed for practice, then we can say, well, how did we get here? And my idea is, like I was saying earlier, that as Ben and I were doing this research and looking back at what was available at the time and saying that there are all these people who were fighting with dual sabers, it seemed that during like the mid to late 1800s, you had a lot of people who were working with swords. But then, of course, the revolver came around, and it made sword fighting a lot less relative to what was happening there. So, sword making kind of went out of fashion. Nobody was making swords anymore, but people were making Hudyo-do because blades this size were great for pirates and bandits and gangsters, that kind of thing. You could hide it pretty easily. So these blades were available, and you would think that a person who wanted to preserve something out of the Wing Chun blade fighting system would say, well, what can I use now? And they'd go back and they'd pick a blade like this, and they'd say he would still fight with it. And then, of course, they didn't want to actually practice with blades like this, so they came up with a design for the Bacham-do, used it out of wood, and then, again, you get the story about a man coming to Hong Kong with the peachwood Bacham-do, and then having his metal-working friend design them for practice. And then, of course, everybody believes that that's the traditional blade for Wing Chun.